Well, welcome back, everybody. I'd now like to introduce Neil Grant from Tenovos. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you very much. So my name is Neil Grant from Tenovos. We're going to talk about how to configure a dam in 3 hours. Now, that may sound really wild and really crazy, but we'll go through kind of the steps, the kind of things to look for, and hopefully we'll give you some kind of idea. Okay, so as I said, my name is Neil Grant. Over here at Tenovos, I'm responsible for delivering successful dam implementations, and in fact, I've been doing that for a number of years. We've got about 15 years experience in this field and delivering implementations from anywhere from about $80,000 worth, 25 users, where the servers actually sat in the office, even the data room or under someone's desk, up to global systems that can be $25 million in cost and kind of 15,000 plus users and true global systems with global reach. Over here at Tenovos, I am the VP of Platform and Applications. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to give you some insight into the thought process that we had when we created Tenovos. For those of you that don't know, basically Tenovos is about 2 years old. We were able to actually take our findings and take our experience and actually create a new dam from base upwards without any technical debt, which really gave us the ability to think about blocks and about pain points that customers had in the past, and to avoid those. Not having the technical debt underneath it really helps with that ability to create the correct solution, as opposed to try to patchwork a solution together, while overcoming the technical debt that you had to start off with. Tenovos, as I said, we are fairly new. But leading Tenovos, we actually probably have one of the most experienced teams in the industry. So that kind of lets us be considered the oldest new kids on the block. During the presentation, I'm going to give you some insight, as I said, into those items and those factors that people overlook usually, and really help you to turn your initial dam investment into a really great dam investment. So, if we think about it, you have a shiny new dam. You've gone through your process, you've gone through your RFP, you've implemented your dam, and that implementation is completed. During that implementation, you went through and you started to gather information on the process around dam, on the metadata, and the things that people need to, the metadata people use to find assets, the metadata that people use to be able to be informed on assets, the information they need, on the security that's applied, on the life cycle of assets. And there's a lot of information in there. UAT and handover probably went really well. In fact, hopefully it went well because you signed off on it. Everyone involved loves the new system. It does exactly what we think we should do. You may have gone through some iterations during UAT to get there, but you're now at a point where everyone's really happy with that system. Okay, so what you need to start to think about is you've now been handed responsibility for the system. Okay, the implementation team that came in to help you actually do that initial implementation is now gone. Okay, they've literally handed you the keys to it. And now you need to think about things. You need to think about how you're going to extend the dam. So really you need to think, what now? So I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into that, as I said, that overlooked area. Because of our prior experience, we really explored this when we created Tenovos. We saw many dams being set up, and that initial setup was great. And it works day one. And what we found over time is that people will, or the dam won't meet the requirements of the business, because the business will change those requirements over time. So we want to make sure, with our customers, and you should also make sure, how do you ensure that an investment can continue to evolve to meet needs of users as they become more digitally aware and as you have more channels applied. And when I say as they become more digitally aware, what I'm actually talking about there is the fact that when your users come onto the system, they come on with a very narrow kind of idea of what's going to actually happen in the system, what the system can do. As they become more and more aware and more conditioned with a digital workflow and with the capabilities of the system, you'll quite often find that what you envisioned to start off with, through that initial analysis and everything else that you implemented, over time, that becomes less relevant. And what I mean by that is that the users will have more and more ideas about what they want to be able to do with the system, how they want to use the system, how they want it to integrate with their everyday work, and how they want it to support it. Okay, so we really need to make sure that you're able to make sure that your investment basically carries on the investment carries on for your company. You want to increase the usage of the DAM across your organization. Okay, again, most DAMs, even when they're enterprise size, they get implemented for one or two departments specifically within the organization. But you want to do a couple of things. You want to make sure that more and more users across your organization are actually using the DAM itself. You also want to make sure that as we start to bring on those other departments, as you start to bring on those other users, that you're able to bring their assets into the system and make sure that their assets in the system are actually represented in a meaningful way across the organization. And the only way you can do that really is by basically extending the system, extending the metadata, the security and everything else that you built up to start off with. And the way we do that and the way we think about it really, it has to be about thinking about items being business-centric. Okay, and what I mean by that is you as a business user, you as a representative of the business should be concentrating on business items. What you don't want to have to concentrate on are IT items. And as we move towards the cloud, what we need to ensure is that IT-centric actually goes away. When we start to think about the cloud, we think about SaaS, software as a service. Well, that as a service piece means that we shouldn't have to involve in IT. It should actually be presented to us as a service, that's a business service that can actually be utilized. And this is really, really important. It's one of the big changes that we've seen over the last few years. And as I said, it's one of the foundational pieces that we have here at Tenovos. Somewhat I'm going to go over basically is items that you should have been looking for when you actually made your DAM prior to purchase. But don't worry, you're also going to learn some new features to ask your current DAM vendor for in order to support your quest to have an awesome, truly enterprise DAM. And if they say no, feel free to come over and have a chat. So the first subject I'm going to touch on is security. If we think about security, security is really, we have security around users in the system. We have security around the assets themselves. And some of the systems, including Tenovos, has security around the fields, the way that we access fields in the system. Okay, all of these items need to be able to be configured with ease within the system in order to meet that quick onboarding goal. Okay, again, we need to concentrate on the business-centric values. So if you think about this, creating user access, we call this a role, and many other systems do as well. But basically, when we create access to a system, what we're actually thinking about there is we're thinking about allowing the top-level functionality. What are the menu options that a user should be able to see? What should they be able to access, the functions they should be able to access in the system? Okay, and this is the user role. So this should be quick and it should be easy to access. It should make sense. It shouldn't be that we're locked into what was delivered on day one. We should be able to go off and configure new roles for new use cases we haven't even dreamed of yet. And again, so making this accessible in a single screen, making it very, very easy to understand, making sure the language is understandable as well in there, because quite often we look at systems and we don't understand language. And also making sure that the combinations are there, because sometimes when you switch on a feature, say I switch on the feature to be able to upload, that's great. But that means I also need to be able to apply metadata. I need to be able to apply security. So there are two other features that need to be enabled for me. And it's not always obvious in systems that those features are also required. So at Tenovos, what we did was we really broke this down, and we made sure that if we enable you to upload, we enable those other abilities for you as well automatically. If you try to disable them, we're going to give you a warning that you shouldn't be disabling those. Think about security. We think about the actual assets themselves. Assets need to be secured, okay? And we need to be able to differentiate between access and ownership to assets. And what I mean by that is if I'm a user who's allowed to upload from group A, I can upload my assets, I can manage my assets. There's a second user, say his name is Sal, and he's able to upload and manage assets, but he's from group B, he should be able to see my assets maybe if I give him access, but he shouldn't be able to change those. Okay, so we really need to be able to distinguish between access and management of assets themselves, okay, on the asset level. Okay, so we now have the role. So my role says I can upload, I can do everything. And we now have the security on the asset, which is going to tell me what I can do with each of the assets in the system, essentially. And beyond that, some of the newer dams, some of the more mature dams, but certainly newer dams, really allow us to actually bring that granularity down another level and actually go and look at it on the field level. So at the field level, we should be able to decide who can view information and who can actually edit that information. So a use case here could be that I have an asset, I have finance information on it, and I also have information from legal on it. So my legal information, my experience has shown that legal people don't like to allow others to update their legal information, but they want it visible. So, so on an asset, I may allow Neil to be able to edit the asset, except they won't be able to edit metadata that belongs to legal. Okay, legal information will be view only. Another department may be finance. Finance have cost information on the assets, and they have it there for their users. So as my Neil user, I can't even see that information. Okay, so, but it's attached to the record. So if someone from finance comes in, they can see that information, they can obviously edit that. But we need to be able to give that kind of granularity again, but it needs to be able to be extensible across the entire system. You can't just have one or two rules, especially when you're talking about an enterprise system. It needs to be scalable so it can go across your entire system. Again, we start to talk about security. So think about that security. If we think about it in two ways. So as I said, the business-centric value. Okay, so business-centric, what do I need to do in order to be able to use the DAM? Well, I need to be able to create the user access, the level of access in the system. I need to be able to create the security access to assets in the system. And I need to be able to create the field level security within the system. Okay, what I don't want to be worried about are the IT-centric pieces. Okay, the IT-centric pieces involve databases, they involve APIs, they involve calls, and basically the creation of modules that can be called by the business-centric users. But this creation has to occur. It has to occur at some point when we think about it. And we need to basically abstract the IT-centric function away, because it's not giving me any business value. So I think about the next piece, which is really users, those users coming in. We just spoke about how we secure them, but we need to be able to easily create new users in the system, okay? And for me, one of my big keys on this was really being able to create them in a single screen. So when I create a new user, I can create whether a locally managed user or whether their identity is actually managed by another system. Some base information you may put in there, first name, last name, email, etc. And that's some kind of standard stuff. But really thinking about an enterprise system where we may have users from subcontractor users, we may have external users, we may have distributors and people like that in the system. We need to be able to identify those, but we also need to be able to find them in the future as well. So, just extending things like the user profile to be able to enable that. From a management standpoint, being able to use standard functions that we have in the DAM anyway. We have searching, we have sorting, we have filtering. Being able to use those actually with the users, with the components, with the people that are going to use the system. So if distributor A suddenly we license a new brand to them, we want to give them access to that new brand. Let me easily be able to find everybody from distributor A. And let me give that level of access to those users through bulk functions. So bulk edit, again, functions that we have in the DAM, but we don't really think about when we think about user management in the system. So, again, if we break that down to those two elements, we have the business-centric elements. Okay, so we've got creating the user and assigning permissions. As I said, assigning, are they single sign-on or are they internally managed users? Again, really simple function, but when we actually see systems and past behavior in the systems, is that it's not always done in a central place. This is done in one place and then it's enabled somewhere else. We need to make this simpler. And then obviously being able to assign security access and assign the role and group membership of the users themselves, but all in a single screen. I don't have to hop between different places to do that. Now, if we look at that from an IT-centric perspective, those things I don't want to do that don't add value, basically enabling users and authentication mechanisms to synchronize back into my system. I don't want to worry about that. I don't want to worry about how to get new users into the system. I don't want to keep track of external users who are using the system and what they can access and things like that. My system should manage it. From a business perspective, I'm interested, but I have no interest in the IT activities that need to go on for that. And then, the next one really is about the key behind everything is metadata. Everybody will tell you metadata are the keys to the kingdom, and they really are. It really is. And it's keys to the kingdom because it's about the content itself, okay? It's about how do we search for content? How do we find content? How do we sort content? How do we view content? What information is important to me when I view content? We already spoke about the ability to actually be able to secure that in security, so field level security and everything else. But even just the creation of metadata itself can become really, really complex, and often is, again, in most systems, and it doesn't need to be or shouldn't be for us. Okay, so if we think about metadata configuration, it should be simple. If I want a list of values, I should be able to create a list of values. I shouldn't have to worry about the table it's going to go in. I shouldn't have to worry about the column it's going to go in. I shouldn't have to worry about unique identifier for each value. The system should take care of that for me. It should be easy in this day and age, and it can be. Now, when we set up an asset, we set up a field or we set up a metadata field, I should easily be able to select the type of field. I should be able to select the drop-down value. If there's a drop-down value, it's going to come from a list. I should be able to put in the attribute name, the label that I want, the English label that I want. I should be able to select the value, the attributes of that. Again, all in that single screen. We extend that a little bit further because we added the ability to add synonyms at that level as well. So, and the reason why we added it at this level is because the synonym may change based on the context of the list that's been used. So we actually added it to a field level attribute. But again, just simple. It's a single screen. It's quick. It's easy to define and to use. Think about probably the most complex one is a cascade where we have the first value drive the second value. It should be a user interface. It should be built in a way that a business user can use it. Again, it shouldn't have to have IT involved. It shouldn't have to define unique values for every single mapping that's going to go on and the fields coming in and all those. I should be able to say, hey, this is field A, this is this first level field, this is second level field, and just define the relationship between those values. Okay, and again, we've built tools to enable us to do that. And then if we think about a table, the table should be just as simple as, hey, I've defined these fields, I want these 4 fields, put them in a table, and we're done. Okay, so very quickly here you can see we've got a cascade, we've got a date field, and we've got a description, and we've got a text field. Okay, there's nothing else that a user needs to do because these are about, again, those business-centric values. So looking at that, what we have is that business-centric value. We've got the ability to create vocabularies of values, set the type of field, the name of the field. We don't have to worry about what's going to go on the back end or what the table name is, what the column name is. Don't worry about that because the system does that for us. We should be able to set the parameters because, that's how the field's going to be used. We should be able to create those hierarchical mappings. This is about usage of the system and create those tables. And when I say create tables, I don't mean from a database perspective, create a table. I mean from a business perspective. These fields make sense to be in a tabular format for us. So from the IT-centric, the things we want to avoid, as I said, we want to avoid the requirement to actually go off and find what database table something is going to sit in. I know this seems crazy when we think about it, but we're driven to this so often. And we want to avoid, anything to do with database. I don't want to go and contact my DBA or my IT team or open a ticket in order to add a new field. And we need to abstract that again because there's no business value in those IT functions. And when there's no business value, that slows us down. Finally, I really want to touch on extending the reach of your DAM. Okay, what I
Neil,
mean by
sorry to interrupt, Neil, but we're coming to the end. Actually, your time's finished. So could you finish up now? Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. So
Thank you, Neil.
yeah, no problem. Thank you very much. It's really just the final point is that not one experience fits all. So you really need to think about the experience and about how your users use the system. If you'd like to find out more, then please do come and talk to us at the booth. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Neil.